Interesting. Like kind of like Gabby. Gabby never had any.
Ready?
Yeah. You know, Lucy went to and she was awesome at surfing. She got on a surfboard every
If you two are done over there.
They do.
Amy has the Esquire in training.
There he is. Okay, 7 o'clock in Gardner, Kansas. Call the meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening, everyone. We have several presentations this evening. Who's coming to you, I believe? All right, so I'll run through these. We've got Earth Day, Arbor Day, and Crime Victims' Rights Week. So, Earth Day. Whereas the first Earth Day was celebrated with the goal of inspiring environmental awareness and encouraging the conservation, protection, and appreciation of our nation's resources. And whereas Earth Day was created to allow us to reflect on the health of our planet and the importance of environmental stewardship, safeguarding our planet and its natural resources to ensure we and future generations will have a clean, healthy world in which to live, work, and recreate. And whereas Earth Day is celebrated annually to celebrate the beauty of our planet, recommit to actions to promote a healthy environment, and to maintain a peaceful, just, and sustainable world. And whereas Earth Day is an opportunity to renew America's commitment to preserving, protecting the state of our environment through community service and responsible stewardship. And whereas the theme for Earth Day 2022 is Invest in Our Planet, which focuses on accelerating solutions to combat climate change and to activate everyone to do their part. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Todd Winters, Mayor of the City of Gardner, Kansas, do hereby proclaim April 22nd, 2022 as Earth Day in the City of Gardner, Kansas, and urge all citizens to celebrate and commit to protect and enhance the long-term health and natural environment of the community. And Jason, are we going to speak real quick about the Earth Day?
Yes, our Earth Day is this Saturday from 10 to noon at the Greenway. People will stage over by Linwood Park, and we'll have volunteers cleaning up trash along the Greenway, and we'll have some giveaways and hot dogs and things to drink. So hopefully the weather cooperates. We'll have a good turnout.
Thanks, Jason. Proclamation number 2. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can be a solution to combating climate change by reducing the erosion of precious topsoil by wind and water, cutting heating and cooling costs, moderating the temperature, cleaning the air, producing life-giving oxygen, and providing a habitat for wildlife. Whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. Whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Todd Winters, Mayor of the City of Gardner, Kansas, do hereby proclaim April 29th, 2022 as Arbor Day in the City of Gardner, Kansas, and urge all citizens to celebrate and support birthday.
Yes, I believe this will be 2021 was 18.
18 years. That's impressive.
Yes.
Okay, finally, Crime Victims' Rights Week. Whereas the term victim is more than just a label and legal standing protections that go along with it. And whereas Crime Victims' Rights Acts passed in Kansas and at the federal level guarantee victims the right to meaningfully participate in the criminal justice process. And whereas victim service providers, advocates, law enforcement officers, attorneys, and other allied professionals can help survivors find their justice by enforcing these rights. And whereas victim service providers are all allied professionals, can increase access to victim services and compensation in areas that have been historically underserved, marginalized, and adversely affected by inequality by implementing culturally responsive services. And whereas equity and inclusion are fundamental prerequisites to survivor care and survivor-led services, provide victims with opportunities to share their experiences are essential blueprints for support. And whereas Crime Victims' Rights Week provides an opportunity to recommit to ensuring that accessible, appropriate, trauma-informed services are offered to all victims of crime. And whereas the City of Gardner is hereby dedicated to helping crime survivors find their justice by enforcing victims' rights, expanding access to services, and ensuring equity and inclusion for all. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Todd Leonard, Mayor of Gardner, Kansas, do hereby proclaim April 24th through the 30th, 2022 as Crime Victims' Rights Week in the City of Gardner, Kansas, reaffirming our commitment to creating a victim service and criminal justice response that assists all victims of crime during Crime Victims' Rights Week and throughout the year, and expressing our gratitude and appreciation for those community members, victim service providers, and criminal justice professionals who are committed to improving our response to all victims of crime so that they may find assistance, support, justice, and peace. This goes to you, Chief. Okay, our next presentation is Southwest Johnson County EDC Progress Report. Mr. Greg Martinet, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here, great to be back in front of everybody in person. It's great to be on the agenda in front of Jason Camus. However, he did call me today and asked if I could keep my comments short so that he could deliver his entire farewell address. So, no, thinking about Jason leaving got me to thinking about our history, and we both came in about the same time, 7 years ago, just a little over 7 years ago, and to think of where the community was at that time. And it's kind of what I'm going to talk a little bit about tonight is some of the history and where we've come from, where we are now. And back then, we both had organizations that were not in very good shape, and they were underfunded, really not too exciting. Some needed more work than others, and we both knew that the ceiling was high here in Gardner, but we both knew we had a challenge ahead of us. And we've gone through 3 mayors in that 7 years. We've gone through 2 city administrations. We've gone through 2 years of pandemic, and from what I can remember, there was not one construction project underway 7 years ago. Was there, Jason?
No.
Not one.
Not that we could think
Not when you look at today, and there's one on every block. And so we've come a long way. And it wasn't easy, didn't come overnight. It took everybody in this room doing it, and it's part of having a great team. And I think we put that together here in Gardner, and consistency is so important, keeping that team together to continue the success. And that's why I'm going to hate to see Jason leave, because he was an important part of that team. So over the last 7 years, the EDC, we increased our budget by about 50%, and we increased our board of directors from 10, and we had to drag those 10 to the meetings. It wasn't easy getting them, to now we have 26, and it's an extremely dynamic and vibrant board. A few of you have been to our meetings and seen the quality of the group, and I'm very proud of that. And Todd, Steve's not here.
Steve is actually joining by Zoom, as well as Councilmember Potter, and I apologize for not recognizing.
That's okay. So Todd, Steve, Jim are on our board. Todd is on our executive committee, and so we are back meeting in person. Everything's back in person, and I have an event every single night this week, so it's exciting. The conferences are back going again, conventions are back going. I will be going to the MRO show next week, which is the maintenance, repair, and overhaul for aviation. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then also back to the International Council of Shopping Centers full convention in May, which is so critical for what we do here in Gardner. Another item I wanted to point out that's kind of changed over the last 7 years is the relationship between New Century and Gardner. And what I think over what I've seen over the last few years is they, especially at the Airport Commission, they have a much greater appreciation of how important Gardner is to them. And they've heard from our companies that work out there, like Stouse Printing, that the employees need somewhere to go eat. They need hotels for when guests come in. And it makes it easier for them to attract people. It makes it easier to have folks come into town to visit them, whether it's clients or personnel from other plants or vendors. And then it's important for Gardner that we have all those employees out there to come over because they have nowhere else to go but into Gardner to spend money, whether it's hotels, services, or restaurants. And so there's a great respect for that. And part of my reports to the Airport Commission is it contains successes we're having in Gardner because it's important to them, and they understand that now. And so when it comes to funding, I made a small request for the next 2 years. It was very conservative. We're doing well financially, much better than we were just a few years ago. And I requested $7,500 next year and $7,500 the following year. And the reason that I had to make a request at all is New Century Air Center has a ceiling of $100,000. Otherwise, we have to go to the Board of County Commissioners and do a presentation, and that's something we want to avoid if possible. So they hit that ceiling, they have for a long time, but they also do in-kind services, my office space, the electric, the printers, the office supplies, and then they also pay the KC-ADC dues. They also pay KC Smartport and some of those other things that then I don't have to pay, but we can't increase their funding to us. Gardner has been terrific, and we went from begging for $30,000 7 years ago to now $100,000, and again, that's solely to the leadership of Steve and Jim and others that have been on the council all this time. Our third way of funding is our membership, and it actually breaks down into thirds: the airport, the city, and then our private members. And but that's a lot of work. It's to attract and retain members takes a lot of my time. It's a lot of work, and it's always up and down, and it's something that is important. But as long as I have the airport, the city funding at those levels, I don't have to. It's not certain death if we lose some of those members. So the things we're going to be doing, adding on that we're not doing now, we've got to do a new website. Our existing website I totally redid as soon as I got here. It was out of date then, and so our technology is over 7-8 years old now, and it's actually things are starting to stop working and we can't fix them, and that's not good. And in fact, it's really not good if you're looking at it from an iPad or an iPhone, and it's just time. The technology's there, and we're working on a proposal now from our Candid Communications that does our marketing for what it will cost to do that. It's not in our budget this year. However, Evergy, who is our very good friend and supports us tremendously, has offered to help with some of those costs, and so we're going to go ahead and do that this year. in fact, we're going to do it right away. And then for those of you who have traveled, know that the costs have just gone insane. And my airfare and registration and hotel to the International Council Shopping Centers has doubled, and since 2 years ago. And so everybody's trying to make up for lost revenue from the last 2 years of COVID, and they're passing it on to us. And for us to maintain the level of marketing and external commitments, it's just taking more money, taking more out of our budget that we didn't plan for. And then many of you knew Shelley that worked 18 hours for me up until last summer, worked with the EDC. She left and to go back to her full-time job, and we haven't replaced her. And it's something that now things have really cranked back up again. I'm starting to meet her back. So we're going to start looking for somebody again to replace her, maybe just a day, a week to get going if we can find the right person. But that's something that we need to, that I've got in the budget and we need to do. And then we didn't have a reserve fund the last, we actually just kind of started cranking it up last year, and slowly but surely putting a little bit in. I think we're up to 28,000 now, which isn't very much. And so we've got to, and I've been asked by the executive committee to increase that amount. So we're gonna, again, put just a little bit in there and to help build that up. And to talk a little bit about projects, I was telling Todd earlier, just in the last 2 weeks, it has cranked up immensely. And we've had some restaurant type places that are on our targets that have come into town. They're looking, they're excited. Unfortunately, our streets are all torn up, which is a good thing, but I help them visualize what it's going to look like when it's over. It's always a good problem for us developers, right, Dave? when we get complaints about you can't go anywhere. But what they did see is activity on every corner and the growth of housing, and they know that this is where they want to be. Just in the last 2 days, and one call this afternoon, 2 of the hotel, we would have, not for COVID, we would have had 2 more hotels over on Grata, which just, 2 hotels over there explodes that development. And both of them, 2 of them that we were working with at the time that were solid are back in the game looking again. And as I told Todd, you get 1 hotel over there, it changes the mindset of the restaurants who are looking at the housing, where a family who lives at Grata may come and eat there 1 time a week, maybe every other week. Well, a hotel is like 80 different families every single night that need to go somewhere. So it just increases their opportunity for customers immensely. So there's more good news around the corner. I think people are still kind of waiting. I know Dave has talked about that, and Jim's talked about it. Is there's just people are kind of waiting to see. And do you go south of Gardner? Do you go to Grata? What is the A spot right now? And you don't want to pick B spot when you really want to be in A spot. So they're kind of watching. They're seeing the houses go up. It's going to take a little bit longer on Grata, I think, to get some of the retail, but it's coming, and the hotel just accelerates that. And I'm going to stop there, give my time to Jason, but I'd answer any questions, and certainly would love to come back and do a full presentation on what our scope of work is, especially with new council people here, and really go into detail where we have more time. But for tonight, I'll stop there. And again, thank you for everything you do for us.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you. I believe we're doing more presentation today, but were there any questions? Council?
Great, thank you. Thanks.
Councilman Potter? Councilman Shute? No. Okay, I think we're good. Thank you very much. It's exciting to hear some of piquing our interest a bit there, so I know good things are to come. Jason.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Thanks, Greg. I feel like Greg and I could have made the same presentation. I mean, 7.5 years ago, where were we? That type of thing. And for some of you who don't kind of know where the chamber was, Greg was very nice in saying some were worse than others. We were probably a little worse than others. We had gone 9 months without staff in 2014 before I got hired. We had pretty shoddy records. We really didn't have a record of how many members we had. I still remember a local business coming in and saying they had been a member for 10 years, and we couldn't find any record of them in any system we had. So they were I was kind of clueless, and I think they were too. We hadn't filed taxes in 5 years, and so just some, and there was none, no intentional wrongdoing, but just maybe a lack of checks and balances. So really, we were lucky to have Stacy and Alyssa. Stacy, we wave, white in a white shirt, and Alyssa next to her. They were at the time the board chair. Stacy was the board chair, and Alyssa was our board secretary. And so I'm more than fortunate now that they both work at the chamber, for those of you who don't know them. So as I often joke, they either came back to check on me and make sure I was doing things right, or they liked the direction we've gone in. And then the two of them, along with Mary Nelson particularly, worked hard to right the ship there. So we spent the first couple of years, working on membership and that, and I'm happy to say 7 years down the line, we've about doubled our membership from what we could tell. So we're about just shy right around 250 members. Our budget as well has increased by about 75%. And we actually had the best financial year we've ever had in 2021, coming out of COVID, which is somewhat ironic with COVID and the way it was, but our investors like what we do, and they have stuck with us, so that part's been good. And probably the best part to me is businesses are engaged with us who maybe weren't engaged with us 20 years ago, that have been in the community for a long time. I've heard the stories about why, you can just imagine the axe to grind, why they hated the chamber, something we did in 2000. And so I'm always pleased when they come back, whether they want to re-engage or they just want to be part of what we do. I think that's important, and it shows that we're doing the right things. I could go into some highlights. I have some notes here from last year. Obviously, coming out of COVID, or being partially in COVID, I guess, for most of the year, it was still an odd year. But we did certain things, and they went really well. We ran events when we could do them. We had great attendance. We did ribbon cuttings as we could. There obviously was a lot of hesitancy and so forth. GE Magazine went out, the 5th annual edition, and every year we get great reviews on it. And actually, we just had a meeting with them last week about the next edition. The sixth edition will come out this fall. And one of the things they said is, based on the advertiser interest, we've probably jumped almost to $30,000 or $35,000 of advertising sales. We're at that point where it's at its max. So we're going to have to add 6 pages of content, which is awesome, and we can add a couple pages of advertisers and actually potentially increase the size of the magazine next year, which is exciting. The air show, which we like to believe we play a part in marketing and just trying to connect, making connections, went well. I mean, by all standards, I think the number was 50. I've heard 48,000, I've heard 52,000, but in that 50,000 mark, and I think it was Daryl Reese who said that it's probably, what they can tell, is the largest ticketed event that Johnson County's ever seen, and I think it went off very successful. We had people call from all over. Just even the week of, we're in Wisconsin, we're going to come down. Where can we stay? What can we do? Can we eat at Blazers? We hear it's got good burgers, whatever it might have been, and so that's great. We landed a brewery in downtown. As many of you know, I do have an ownership interest in it, and that was never the intent until they kind of conned me into it, I suppose. But I'm excited about it. I think I'm bullish on the community, and I think that along with Ash and Anvil and some of the other stuff that's happening downtown, will be a big part of our future in downtown. And then we're just doing some other things where we've reestablished the new resident bag program. That's going really well. It's awesome when we had a plant manager from Carrie, the plant manager at Carrie Ingredients, who many of you know Carrie. He actually posted online a picture of it. Had no clue that was, we had told them about that was something we do. They're a new member of the chamber, and he posted online, "Hey, check out this cool bag I got. This is really awesome, with all this new stuff." And it's obviously we work well with the community policing officer, with John Steinmetz, and Stacy and Alyssa deliver all those. And then doing things like the citywide garage sale. We're quickly trying to make the citywide garage sale actually be fully mobile, so you won't have to pick up a paper map anymore. And our hope is by the end of this week, we'll have that ready to go, since we have the community-wide garage sale. We have a backup plan, I think, but that's our goal this year, and we're really working hard towards that. kind of the feather in our cap is we just found out last week that we qualified for a National Chamber of the Year award, and that's the 5th time in 7 years that we've actually qualified for that award. It's based on various metrics that have to do with membership growth, budget, membership retention is a really big part of it. We retain over 90% of our members every single year, which is exciting. And we don't actually apply for the award. It's a lot of work. And ultimately, I don't think it's what the board wants me to spend my time focusing on. But just the fact that our metrics meet those standards is huge for us. So the other thing that we did great last year is we hired Alyssa to work with the chamber. And so 2 great staff. And couldn't be more thrilled to have both Stacy and Alyssa. And then the new website, and really that didn't happen last year. We've got it off the ground here at the beginning of January. It's kind of the last piece to our rebranding. Back to Gardner Chamber, established 1975, kind of go back to our roots. So we're good there. Obviously the big thing is everybody knows I'm leaving here in a couple weeks. My last day is April 29th, although as staff know, I probably won't be gone initially because there'll be a lot of help and support in that. I did have 2 of our board chair, Rob Wyrick. Rob, I don't know if everybody knows you, but Rob is the executive director of the Olathe Health Charitable Foundation, and then our chair-elect is Adam Malk with Stockton and Stern. I brought them along in case you wanted to ask them any questions, or just so you could put a face. Obviously, they are starting. We've already started the process for my replacement, and they've been sorting through resumes, and we'll be starting interviews here in the next week or 2. So. We're moving in that direction, and I'm providing whatever support I can there. For 2023 and 24, we are asking for an increase as well. My request is for a $10,000 increase in each year, so 50. Right now we're at 40,000. That would bump us to 50 in both 23 and 24. And really, there's 3 main areas that money would go to. The first being tourism marketing. And so, a couple years ago we had talked, and this was pre-COVID, we had talked about the CVB, and maybe we're not quite at that point yet. However, there have been some opportunities that we have not been able to go after just because we don't have a little bit of extra incentive money. And so ultimately part of that would be, I've already talked with Stacy at the Hampton Inn, and the Hampton's doing great business. Obviously Super 8's have been doing very well as well. As an example, we had a conference we bid on for this October, just a small, be here for 2.5 days, and they'd probably take about 40 room nights for 3 nights, which is half of the Hampton, but we just couldn't get over that hump because we didn't have that extra incentive to offer. A lot of times what a tourism or a chamber or a CVB will offer is, it could be an incentive for a dinner downtown on one night at the conference, or $1,000 sponsorship towards a speaker. That type of thing, and a lot of chambers and a lot of CVBs are able to offer that. We just don't have that capability right now. And the community we lost out to, I know, put some money in because I know they're executive and I know what they've been able to do. But I do think we were very competitive, and that's what we were told. So part of it would go for that, and there would be a system in place for those types of events. It's not something that would go, as an example, we would use that for a wedding. For somebody personally, you would use that for more of a business type meeting, maybe a sporting event. If Parks and Rec, for instance, was looking at a sporting event, and we could help incentivize and ideally use that money locally. The second thing there is the farmers market. As you know, we've been providing some in-kind service the last few years to help the farmers market, and we want to continue that. We've even offered, the last couple of years, we've offered an intern, which we pay for. However, it'd be nice to have a little bit of a little more financial capability there to continue to support the market. Both from a marketing standpoint, we also know their volunteers are aging, and there's a small group, and we want to keep that going. I mean, the market's full. I mean, we get requests all the time for vendors who want to be part of it, so we would use the second part there. And the last thing is content. One of the biggest requests we get is for like a relocation guide, or like what can we send? They don't want the GE magazine. They don't want to go to the city's website where it's, there's 500 pages of information. They want a 4 or 6 or an 8-page guide. And so I've talked with Danica, we've talked with Ben over at the USD 231, because that's one of the biggest components of it is the school district, because people, when they move, they want to know what's the school district like. And so we've talked about, hey, we would love to create this. We've been collecting samples from other places, and so we see using part of that towards that would also be offset probably by some advertising dollars. So the other thing that we're doing right now is we're working to modernize our office. We've probably had the same office, everything, even down to the carpet for the last, 20 plus years. So we're, as everything we do, we're trying to be creative in how we pay for that and get some of our members to help us out. And so we're working through that right now. That's really what I have. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer. I didn't want to bring a lot of new stuff because I feel like whoever follows me might have their own vision. But I do know the board has this is kind of the direction we've been headed. The last thing that I've talked about recently, and I think will be the other thing that will, and it's not really a money thing from transient guest tax purposes, but we've been talking about a community foundation, and I think there's a lot of a groundswell of support for that. And I think, Dave and I have talked a little bit about that. I know I've talked with the Historical Museum briefly about it. The idea that we could create a mechanism for people to leave money here and to utilize that money for the good of the community for various projects. As an example, the farmers market, they can't go out and take SNAP funds or EBT dollars because they don't have a 501c3 status. So they don't really have the capacity to do that. One of the things that a community foundation might be able to do is operate as an entity that groups like that could fall underneath. Or back when there was a community garden here some years ago, same type of thing. It could operate, there'd be an operating agreement. And it's something that the chamber could administer using, kind of the backbone for what we have and also for the business community to support some of that. So that is something that's on our docket in the future, but not something that, we necessarily will put in here. We'll just talk about it as we come back in the future. So if you have any questions, I'm happy, but otherwise I would I don't know if Rob or Adam, you want to share anything? No, they're like, no, not in a million years. So, if you have any questions, otherwise, thank you guys very much for everything. I look forward to seeing, hopefully everybody, I don't know who all is coming on Thursday night. We do have our annual dinner Thursday night. If you're not registered, we'd love to have you. Annual dinner and State of the City. And, I just want to say thank you to the mayor as well as everybody and Jim. I think that's a great partnership. It's something that chambers and cities all throughout Johnson County do together. Is their State of the Cities. Oftentimes they're a lunch, but this year we'll do it as a dinner, and my recommendation has already been to Danica and that we look at doing it at lunch and maybe even doing it with the EDC as a kind of a three-pronged partnership in the future, because I think it's a great way to bring all those people together to hear all the good stuff that's going on in the community. Awesome. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Jason. Okay. Next, we'll move on to outside agency requests, and Deputy Administrator Amy Nasta. Finance Director Matt Wolf was ill today, so he unfortunately had to go home.
So I will be playing the part of Matt tonight.
Yes.
So, good
Welcome.
evening,
Thank
Mayor, Council. The city contributes funding to several organizations that provide services to Gardner residents. As part of the 2023 to 2024 biennial budget process, the city received funding requests from those agencies for fiscal years 2023 and 2024. Tonight's presentation will provide an update on the economic development and special alcohol and drug funds, as these funds provide monetary support for the majority of the outside agency requests to be discussed tonight. A summary of the funding request will also be included for the governing body's review. Representatives from several of these agencies are here tonight and available for questions. Please note that the Gardner Cemetery is in the process of developing their budget and plans to submit their request in May. The Economic Development Fund is funded by transient guest tax revenues. The City of Gardner received approximately $245,000 in such revenues in 2021. It is anticipated that these revenues will increase slightly over time. Projected expenditures for the Economic Development Fund include the new funding request from the Gardner Chamber of Commerce, Southwest Johnson County EDC, and Gardner Historical Museum, to be outlined later in this presentation. Expenditures also include maintaining the current funding levels for the Gardner Small Business Assistance Program and the city's recreation event promotion activities. These funding levels are $25,000 and $40,000 respectively. Staff anticipates that the annual revenues into the Economic Development Fund will be adequate to cover projected annual expenditures, inclusive of the new funding request. Annual revenues for the Special Alcohol and Drug Fund totaled approximately $51,000 in 2021. These revenues are derived from 1/3 of special alcohol tax revenues. Please note, expenditures from this fund are statutorily restricted to use for the purpose of funding programs for the education, treatment, and intervention of alcohol and drug use. Even with the increased funding request from the Drug and Alcohol Council to be outlined on the next slide, it is anticipated that the city will have an annual budget surplus and will continue to build fund balance. On the screen before you is a table detailing the agencies submitting funding requests, the funding source for each of these requests, the 2021 and 2022 budgets, and the requested budget amounts for 2023 and 2024. With the exception of the Johnson County Utility Assistance Program, all agencies have requested increase for 2023, with the Southwest Johnson County EDC requesting an additional increase in 2024 as well. While the $30,000 funding request for the Drug and Alcoholism Council/UCS may appear substantial, the intent of this request is to return to funding levels that are closer to 2016 amounts, which were $32,000. You may have also noticed an increase of $5,000 for the Gardner Chamber of Commerce included in the revised 2022 budget. Last month, the Economic Development Council met and recommended increasing the 2022 funding for the Gardner Chamber of Commerce by $5,000. This increase is intended to provide seed funding for a downtown association, which includes a snow removal program. So I can try to answer any questions you may have, or you may want to send them to Matt, but I will do my best.
Are there any immediate questions? Councilman Van Potter?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Council Vice President? Oh, he's not on. Okay. It's up to you. If you'd like to talk about it now, we can.
Sure. Okay, so the 5,000 that we were looking at for the chamber, I was thinking that maybe we, instead of giving it to the chamber, we create a fund that the city maintains. That is a city beautification fund that is matching funds for any business that applies to do something to their business. And that's kind of the intent of this. And when we talked about it in the meeting, the idea was that the chamber could run it. But the chamber's going to be transferring people. They've got plenty on their plate. If we run it in-house, they're going to have to figure out all those details that we could figure out and put into a resolution, right? So who gets it, how much, is it quarterly, is it yearly, do you only get $500 a time, can you put in a project for $20,000, what can you get, right? So it's going to take time and money, and that's something that we could put in. Plus, I'm looking out, 10 years from now when maybe that 5,000's turned into 50,000 or 100,000. We should probably have that codified. So my suggestion is that we look at doing that and have the city maintain that, and the requests come in, and it alleviates that from the chamber. If the 45 would help in 2022 for other services that you're trying to do, that could be on the table. But I think for that specific need, we separate it.
So are we taking snow removal out of the equation in that scenario?
Well, I think that's something that they would have had to figure out, and we can figure out too, is what projects qualify, because it's really gray when you say what's maintenance, right? Is painting the building maintenance, or is that beautification? Could be both, right? Fixing an awning, cleaning off your sidewalk. So we would have to figure that out.
Yeah, and there were other nuances to the program that we discussed in that meeting. We were going to have a small, I believe, membership fee or something for people to buy into the program, so that we could increase the level of funds. And I don't believe that we had gotten to the point where we were doing a beautification program with that amount of money, because that would be pretty insignificant if you're talking about repairs or doing something in that were kind of limiting that to actually projects that the participating businesses could choose from, and maybe choose one a year, and then include snow removal in that program. That's the scope of what we had discussed. Of course, we didn't vet the whole thing and put it down in writing, and this was just a proposal, and we believe that it would be better administered by the chamber than the city taking on that task.
I think long-term, even if they administer it, we're gonna wanna be the ones that create the resolution that specifies what things are approved that the city will match. And, you know, this year, regardless of what happens and if they use it for snow, whatever. But, you know, if that turns into $500,000 in 15 years, there's gonna be bigger requests, and it's gonna be a little bit more infighting on what it is and how it is. And, you know, obviously Jason won't be here, so 5 years down the road, does anybody remember why there's an extra $5,000 in the chamber's budget? I bet not. But if it's here and being maintained and the approval process goes through some sort of checks and balances that we already have, then I think as it grows, it'll be a better program. So I would. Go ahead, Derek.
I'm with Mark on this. I think there needs to be parameters set in addition to the accountability of how the money's being used, rather than just kind of a blanket. And maybe I misunderstand what I'm reading, but I think tighter parameters on that would be advised.
Yeah, and maybe it's just that the programs, those two things don't mix, snow removal and the beautification program, because if you're talking about awnings or sidewalks or doing repairs, those are more substantial. And as our transient guest tax and that fund grows, you know, there may be a time where we could incrementally fund that from, like, say, in the neighborhood 25 to 50,000 to try to incentivize that.
Right.
Instead of doing, you know, 5,000, picking a small project and doing snow removal.
I really just wanted to see the city get out of private snow removal.
Well, and you know, we've heard what the EDC does. We've heard what the chamber does. I think the beautification thing, while it can work in concert, it's a separate thing, right? It's its own living, breathing thing. So I think if we're going to fund the chamber for, you know, all of those marketing type things that they do and keeping the businesses, you know, vibrant in this community, this is kind of muddies the waters. So that's why I want to take that out. Forget that piece. Now, does that change the budget numbers? I don't know. We can talk about that. But I just think we should create that as a separate, it's not a separate agency, but something we do as a city.
So for the purposes of this, though, you're saying, for now, for their budget, go back to the 40,000 amount, and then take that aspect of it completely out, the 5,000.
I would take the 5,000 out for that aspect. If Jason, does the 50?
It was not inclusive of that increased 5, not knowing what that, like what you're saying, Mark, what that future might be.
Okay, exactly. So then I would leave the 50,000 for 23 and 24. And then we look at doing the other thing separately, and we haven't paid them the 5 yet for
Correct.
this year, right? So
Yeah, no, we have
we
not
just
billed.
don't, and we work on that separately and let them do what they do best.
I was kind of leaning towards, yes, I think the beautification project, like you were talking, you know, like city administrator was talking about, is bigger picture with awnings and buildings, and a 5,000 fund is probably not going to even touch beautification projects. I like the thought of keeping the $5,000 in, because as you well know, I'm a fan of helping them get this snow removal situation fixed for everybody. Since we set precedent for 20 years and did it, I think that this, keeping the $5,000 in, earmarked for some sort of way to come up with a snow removal plan, I like that.
But then are they gonna take this 5,000, come up with a snow removal plan that they all buy into, and then we're done? That the city put 5,000 towards it, or are we paying 5,000 every year and we're funding private snow removal again?
My thoughts, it's one time only, where this is to help get this program established, and also it kind of shows that, hey, we know that we've kind of done some weird things, in my opinion, on this snow removal, and I don't know, I think it would be good faith with the business owners too. I'd be fine with keeping the 5,000 in. The additional.
I think we're kind of getting into, I mean, I'd rather just take it out from this scenario, and if we decide to do something along those lines, we'll come back to that at the city.
I'm on the same page.
What is our small business fund that you discussed? What does that do, the small business assistance fund? Is that similar to the beautification, or is that separate?
I think Dave may be able to speak better to that.
I don't know about better, but I can add to it. I would tell you, in the 2 years I've been here, we've had no activity on that fund at all. So that's about all I can really add to it. I'd have to take a look at it, but I do know that it went to that idea of helping them with physical improvements and things like that.
So we already have a fund somewhat in place that maybe we just need to tweak a little bit.
Well, based off when that survey went out and everything else, I don't think there's much interest.
No. But if we already have a small business assistance fund,
What, can I answer? When the small business fund came up, I don't know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, the idea that we had all talked about with transient guest tax, and that was something, that would help small businesses, particularly for like more of a physical, like an infrastructure oriented project. That was the original talk. So like and the example given at the time was Groundhouse South, because they had to redo sidewalks and pay for that. So the idea was, we give, bigger businesses oftentimes have different resources at their disposal, a TIF district and stuff, and the smaller businesses don't. And so the idea was this could be something, and I think they said at the time they could apply for up to $25,000 to help with specifically an infrastructure-oriented project. That was the idea behind it. And knowing that maybe if the fund grew, we could do other things such as facade work or awnings or, front windows and so on.
And after the program was introduced, I know we used it one time and it was a developer that used it.
Okay. Well, again, for the purpose of this tonight, is there consensus to go back to the 40,000 for 2022 and then 50,000 for 23, 24?
Consent.
Okay. Does that give you direction? Jason?
Yep.
Good. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Thank you very much, Amy.
Thank you.
And thank you to all the partners that came this evening. Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
You're welcome to stay.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, no public hearings. So at this time, members of the public are welcome to use this time to make comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing. If you wish to come forward, please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. There's a 5-minute time clock to your left. No profanity, no personal attacks. And with that being said, come forward and state your name and address for the record. The podium is now open.
No, looks like it's me again.
We did a good job last time.
Well, good evening, Kenny Keeler, 16930 South Ingrid Street, Gardner, Kansas. Good evening, city administrators and mayor and city council. Just to give you a quick update, we had a court hearing on the 14th, and that hearing was specifically to set dates in place for discovery, which is June 9th. And so it appears that this is going to continue to go to the courts. In the meantime, the developer continues to move forward, and based upon their answers in the suit questioning, is that they intend to sell the homes even before a court ruling takes place. The issue I have with that is any suit is tied to the property, and any potential homeowner that were to purchase those homes now knowingly or maybe unknowingly will be involved in a suit that maybe they didn't even know existed. So all that being said, I understand the issues involved with the city not being able to do certain things based upon potential hindrances from developers and those types of things. However, I think that the city could hide behind the current litigation in stating that until there is a ruling by the courts that the city, my suggestion would be, will not issue any more permits or do any more inspections, because it puts any potential new homeowners at risk that would potentially purchase these homes knowingly or unknowingly that there is current litigation going on. So tonight, just mainly wanted to let you know that there was a court hearing. Unfortunately, the wheels of justice never turn quickly. I don't know if this is a 3-month, 6-month, 12-month ordeal. I know that they just continue to move forward in spite of the court's recommendation that they slow down, and even the city's recommendation from the very beginning that they have a game plan before moving forward. Unfortunately, they've put everybody in a bad position. They put themselves in a bad position, they put the homeowners in a bad position, and they've put the city in a bad position. So that's just an update. Appreciate you guys' time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
We can't see the mayor back there. There you are. We would like to thank the council very much for your support for the 20 years that our Gardner Historical Museum has now been in town. It was an idea and a dream that I found from going to a museum in Paola. I had to go down there to find my history on my own building. And I finally found the original painting and picture of the funeral home that was a home. And from that I came back and we formed a wonderful group. Nancy Rankin, Laura McCarthy joined us later. Some of the original people are still on our board for 20 years. So we're happy to still be here. We made it through the pandemic, and with your assistance with the transient dollars, we are allowed to stay open and continue to have events and talk to the schools and do the programs that tell you about your Gardner history. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Shirley.
Nancy, buddy?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think they were opening about right when I came to town, so it's been exciting to see them grow through the years from where they started. So done a great job.
We got a building. We started.
Yes. Okay. Moving on to consent agenda. Is there a council member who would like to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Number 5.
Number 5. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Deaton. Second Van Potter. That we approve consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Abstain? Consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7 pass. Consent agenda item number 5.
I mean, I assume there was going to be a line to pull this to at least discuss it.
Yes.
My issue is the price per ton. Last year, we did not hit the minimum, which made the price per ton over $400 a ton. If we don't change what is allowed to be picked up or the amount of things, I feel like we're still going to come in under that. And at $400 a ton, it just doesn't seem fiscally responsible to continue this program.
I'm good with pulling it.
I mean, I
I will make a note that we did discuss the bid with Gardner Disposal. They're unwilling to change anything. So if we change the number of items or things to be picked up, they'll pull their bid.
And it's my understanding the bid is now for 100 tons at $400 a ton.
Right now, the bid is a guaranteed minimum of 200 tons. Essentially, we tried it at 100 tons, we got a price of 400. We tried it at 200, we got a price of 200. The minimum that they're willing to be paid for this event is 40 grand.
Yeah, but it's still, I think it was my understanding, and I spoke with him today, was that it's down to 100.
No,
No.
it's, and if you look at the bid form, it says 200 tons at $200 a ton.
I spoke with him today, he said he pulled that bid.
If he pulled that bid, then yeah, we would be back to his original bid of 100-ton minimum at $410, I believe, per ton.
Which is the same.
Right,
or-
it's the same
it's
as
the
40
same
grand
price.
either way.
And if you recall, we started in 2015 and we're just over 10,000 and we were barreling towards 100,000 in 2021. So we reduced the items, specifically the construction material, which, we weren't sure how much less materials we were going to pick up, but it was 100 tons less than what we anticipated.
At 400 a ton, that doubles the price per ton cost. And then I think I will have to read back, but we were told that only 1 out of every home participated, which is an estimate. So
1 out of every 8.
yeah, 1 out of every 8, sorry, participated. So it's not a super high participation rate. And with guidelines, I've participated every year. I love it. I just don't think it's financially responsible to continue paying this much. That's a huge jump.
It is.
I'm with Councilwoman Deaton on this.
Sound like consensus? Okay. So, moving,
So we won't authorize that.
So
Right.
we'll communicate that via
Yes.
social media starting tomorrow.
do we need to, how do we move forward with this?
We just don't have a motion to consider.
Take action on consent agenda items 1 through 4, 6, and 7.
We did that.
We did that.
We did that. Well then,
Do we all vote?
Just
no
don't
on
discuss
that
it.
or no?
Don't.
you could either take no action or vote to turn it down.
Just no
take no
motion,
action.
and we just keep going.
Okay. Planning and zoning consent agenda. Is there a council member who would like to remove an item from the planning and zoning consent agenda? Hearing none. Is there a motion to approve the planning and zoning consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion.
Motion Baldwin, second Deaton, that we approve the planning and zoning consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Abstain? Planning and zoning consent agenda passes. Committee recommendations. Number 1, consider approving a conditional use permit for Mark Industries for a recycling center. Dave.
Mayor, members of council, good evening. Mark Industries operates at 800 North Center Street on approximately 3.8 acres of land in a building that's almost 79,000 square feet. The property is zoned to M2 currently, and is actually adjacent to M2 zoning on 3 of the 4 sides of this property. As part of their operation there, they collect recyclable materials and bale those for shipping out to other places. That is all done within the building itself, so there's no external waste or blowing of those kinds of materials out around the neighborhood. In light of this, the industry came to us a while back as they were looking at different proposals in their operation, and it was discovered that the existing CUP was about to expire. That existing CUP was a 10-year CUP as well. They requested a renewal of that 10-year CUP. The Planning Commission took a look at this on March 28th and recommended approval with 2 conditions: that the conditional use permit, if extended, would expire on May 1st of 2032, and that trees would be planted to provide screening along the south lot line adjacent to 2 houses that are there. So it's kind of softening the building from the view of those houses. With that, you have a recommended motion or suggested motion to adopt ordinance number 2729, and I stand ready for any questions.
Thank you, Dave.
I don't have a question, but I was on planning commission when we did the original CUP. I was like, I know this, when I was reading through it. Yeah.
Excellent. Any comments from the public? Any additional questions or comments from council?
Let them keep doing what they're doing.
Sounds good. Hearing none, do I have a motion for committee recommendation number 1?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Baldwin, second Deaton, that we adopt ordinance number 2729, an ordinance approving a conditional use permit on certain lands located in the city of Gardner, Kansas, under the authority granted by Title 17 of the Municipal Code of the city of Gardner, Kansas. City Clerk, please call roll.
Councilmember Van Potter,
Yes.
Councilmember Baldwin,
Yes.
Councilmember Deaton,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Ordinance number 2729 passes. All right. No old business this evening, no new business. So we will go right into council updates. And we can start with Chief Belcher.
Just real quick, we are going to we're going to be doing some training, police training at the doctor's building on 183rd and Center. We posted on our social media. We're also going to have signs out there that say police training, so we don't have any type of unnecessary people worrying about what may be happening, because we're going to be in the parking lot doing a lot of movements and doing things. So we put that on our Facebook today. We're also going to have those large police signs out. So we're going to be doing some scenario-based training and incorporating some de-escalation in that as well. So just a quick reminder in case you guys hear or see of anything.
Are you allowing audience? Are you going to allow an audience to view?
Well, we may have an audience on the sidewalk, so
Okay.
we'll just let them stay there and watch.
Okay, all right. City Clerk Sharon Rose?
nothing for me tonight.
Finance Director / Assistant City Administrator?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
City Attorney Reich?
Nothing for me.
Let's move over to Gons.
The city met with GBA, and we should be ready to do a wastewater treatment recommendation or presentation on May 2nd. It will be a work session.
Does everyone agree to that work session? Okay, great.
Then
I'd say I look forward to it, but I don't.
excuse me?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
On Prairie Trace, we completed the three-phase underground extension along the New Trails Parkway on the north side of the trails. This will provide the power to the Treadway apartments.
Excellent.
So right now we're working in trying to hook up the clubhouse, so be ready.
Very good.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Gons. Parks and Rec Director, Jason Bruce.
Yeah, a couple things. I obviously mentioned Earth Day this weekend out at Wynwood Park. We'll start to see some activity at the Aquatic Center picking up. Start filling hopefully this week on the new side. Just staff's kind of watching temperatures. So you'll start to see some activity over there. Also, believe it or not, we are 77 days from Independence Day. So we pretty much have everything lined up. Exciting news that the mayor will be announcing this Thursday who our lineup is for this year. So we're really excited for our talent that we have lined up this year. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jason. Community Development, Mr. Dave Knopp.
We have Planning Commission meeting next Monday at 7 p.m. in these chambers. 3 items on the agenda. University Park will be revisiting us. It's the apartment proposal on the northeast corner roughly of White and 167th Street. We also have a commercial rezoning application that's before the Planning Commission for the Cedar Niles 56 Highway northeast of that, northeast of the McDonald's, that area there. And Frontier Credit Union is submitting a development plan for the site in Plaza South. So we have commercial activity going on as well as residential activity on that agenda.
Excellent, thank you. Public Works Director, Kevin Headley.
Good evening. I'm sure folks have probably noticed a lack of work going on the US 56 project. Just wanted to bring you a quick update there. In the course of excavating the pavement that was existing out, a couple of things were found. Number one was a survey problem with the original survey on the design. What it looks like is some elevations were incorrect on the original survey that was done. That's required a little bit of redesign. We've received the design update today, I believe, and we're just pending KDOT's review and reissuance of a go on that for the contractor. The other thing they found was some areas of pavement underneath the existing pavement that were not found in core samples that were taken. So those two combined things have kind of led to a slowdown in the work over the last couple of weeks. We don't know exactly what that impact on the overall project schedule is at this point. We'll hear more from KDOT over the next couple of weeks, and I'll keep you up to date. But we would expect work to really pick back up here again in about a week to 2 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, they were moving along really quickly there at first. Yeah. All right. City Administrator.
As Greg Martin had noted, we've had a uptick in interest in and around Gardner. There's several developers that have come in town that are just looking for ground, nothing specific. So when they're given tours around the city, obviously the city has 10 acres behind the Justice Center, and because of the development in close proximity to that, I've had 3 or 4 inquiries on whether the city would be interested in selling that land. So I just need to get, and if you remember, we bought the land, it was sold as a 15-acre block. You know, there was discussion about maybe a future public works building, Parks and Rec. We do have other land in the city where we could accommodate those structures if we're interested in selling or marketing the 10 acres. Obviously, we'd look at, you know, what was going in there, whether it was revenue producing and what our future needs were and how far in the future those would be. But if there's a consensus that we are at least willing to listen to potential offers, then we may bring something back to the council.
I would say yes.
I'm always willing to listen to it.
Okay. The other thing is, so the infrastructure bill, obviously billions of dollars available, and when the federal government puts out the guidelines for grants or how they're going to distribute those funds, they've been giving us a week to 10 days to do grant applications, and it's very, very time consuming. So we had a opportunity to partner with the county and with Edgerton on the RAISE grant, which is rebuilding American infrastructure with sustainability and equity. It's a $43 million project to do the full build out of the Gardner Bridge and then road improvements on Gardner Road down to 215th Street. Jen Jordan, Amy Nasta worked for several days straight to get that done, and we submitted that late last week. So I passed on the application to our lobbyist in Washington, and they're going to take it and run with it as well. It's an opportunity for us to get 100% funding for the project. It wouldn't allow us to get out of the first phase, what we've committed to the first phase, but the second phase and the road improvements would be 100% funded. So
This is a great partnership with the City of Edgerton and the county both. I mean, it's a great way for us to mutually benefit and work together for the benefit of everyone around here.
Yeah, and our staff worked closely with their staff, but Jen started it, and then she was scheduled for vacation, so Amy had to pick it up, and Kellen was heavily involved, but the staff did a great job getting it all done, and Amy wrapped it up and submitted it last week. So
thank you, everyone. Okay. Councilwoman Deaton.
Yeah, I'd like to revisit the 1% COLA that we got numbers on today for all non-PD personnel, only being $48,800 across all funds, 26 $6,400 just to the general fund. I think it would go a long way for making up for not having a COLA for the last 8 years for our city staff, and then also bringing some of the non-PD up a little bit closer to where the PD got some raises as well.
And I will point out, we just decided not to do the project that was $40,000 to $60,000 in our budget.
And in that, I saw that it wasn't retro, it was just starting with the next pay period. Is that correct, what I read? Okay. I'd be in favor of that, not retro.
I'll let Eric speak. Councilman Van Potter?
I have no updates.
He has no updates. How do you feel about the 1% COLA?
Oh, sorry, I had audio that was missing. I don't think they were close enough to the mics. I'm comfortable with it moving forward.
Well, that's consensus. Okay.
I think it brings us even more closer to what's appropriate. So.
Do we have to vote on it, or do we have a consensus and it can be added?
So there is consensus to add the additional 1%.
Yeah.
From here, moving forward.
It's a one-time adjustment.
Right, a one time, because then we'll revisit all of this at budget time.
Okay. Councilman Van Potter, you have updates?
No updates.
Okay. Councilwoman Roberts.
No updates, thanks for asking.
Welcome. Council President Baldwin.
I don't have anything.
I have nothing either. So, is there a motion
So
to
moved.
adjourn?
Second.
Motion Deaton, second Baldwin, that we adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained?